Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Happy holidays, everybody, from the Sunbury Motors Studio. Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Here today and tomorrow. Then I'll be in Orlando on Monday, but no show. Of course, Tuesday's the game. Then back in full gear on Wednesday. Tommy Stevens is out of the bowl game. Surgery that occurred just after practice. I want to say he had it. It was last week, I think he had it. He had done some work. And I remember saying something to Jack Ham about, you know what? I said he's doing less and less in practice. That's what made me wonder that they might do something. But so he is out of the bowl game. Now, he might actually end up going to be on the sideline, but he's not down with the team right now. He's home. So that's where Tommy is right now. That means Sean Clifford is the backup quarterback. And for those who may be wondering, okay, who's third? Well, it's one of two guys. It's either Michael Schuster or Will Levis. You're saying, okay, in past years, I would have told you with absolute certainty that it would be Michael Schuster. But that's different now. Will Levis has not played a down this season, which means he had 4 games to play in this year if they wanted. So if they ever needed a third quarterback, which you don't want them to see, you don't want to see them having to use Sean Clifford in the game. But remember, under the new rules, Will Levis could play this game and still maintain his freshman eligibility. Just something to file away for later on. So, let's see. Today's show, I believe today's show is Mark Wogenrich. Is that correct?
That is correct. Well, I'm at 3:35 today.
And he'll be our guest today. And tomorrow, we've got Rich Scarcella. We also have tomorrow Tom Leach, the play-by-play voice of Kentucky. We will have Eli Gold, the play-by-play voice of Alabama, as we talk about the matchup with Oklahoma Saturday, and then picks tomorrow. On my bowl picks, I am rolling.
Something like that, I guess.
Right to the bottom of the abyss. Right now, I am the Cumberland Farms of picks.
So I've been told here.
Okay.
So this is our standings. Suit actually leads the way at 11-6. Sean is also 11-6. King is 10-7, and you, Steve, somehow, some way, are 7-10.
I'm almost to the Cumberland Farms of being 7-11. Cumberland Farms time 7-11. Oh, whoa, hey, woo.
And it may be one tie because the
no, that's just
that bowl game didn't happen the other night.
That game won't count. That game won't count. Well, no, it won't count because it doesn't count. And they're not even going to count the stats from it. It used to be in the old days bold stats. I mean, there's so many absurdities in college football. One of them is bowl stats didn't count forever. Really? It's a game. Now bowl stats count. Right? Forever, bowl stats did not count. So, Blair Thomas would run out and he'd go for 170-something yards in the Holiday Bowl against BYU. And it doesn't count in his career numbers. It doesn't count in his Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner ran for like 480 yards in 3 bowl games. That doesn't count. Who comes up with this stuff? Who thinks of these things? That's what gets me. It's a game.
I don't think anybody could have made up what has happened with this bowl season between what happened last night in the Cheez-It Bowl and then the cancellation of the First Responder Bowl, too. I've never seen anything like it. I really haven't.
I'm pretty sure I picked TCU. I don't even know the heck I picked. I'm pretty sure I picked TCU in that game, and I watched that game last night. I watched it. I sat there and watched the entire game. 9 interceptions. I watched it into overtime. The game almost ended on a pick six in overtime.
Right, that would have been just...
But it would have been wiped out because of the sideline interference
Right,
play.
exactly, yeah. It's
And
been a wild bowl season.
And I think it was somebody who was not a coach, a player, or whatever. I think it was actually one of the TCU administrators.
From what I saw online, I believe it was either one of them or the exact sports information director that was on the sideline.
I mean, it was in a tie. Like, why are you standing there?
Yeah, that blew me away.
What are you doing?
That's probably one of the more bizarre football games I've seen in quite some time.
I mean, every time somebody got something going, hey, it's intercepted. Or, hey, intercepted. Now they're point blank. No, they intercepted it the other way. Okay, great. It was just bizarre land watching that game last night in Phoenix. Now, and we've got Temple leading Duke 27-21 at halftime of this game. Now I want to get into very quickly, and then we'll get back to Penn State football. I want to get into something that's very sad. Very, very sad. I don't know if any of you know the story of Josiah Viera. Josiah Viera, and we've talked about him before in the show. Josiah Viera had progeria. He loved baseball. And I want to tell you right now, his grandfather, Dave, to me, was a saint on this earth. Was a saint on this earth. And because the grandfather took him everywhere. Dave took him everywhere. Progeria means that your age of your body kicks into a completely different gear than everyone else. All right? Matt, how old are you?
25.
25. So Matt's 25, and his body is 25. Okay? Josiah was 14. He probably was the age, body-wise, of maybe somebody 80, 90. Because it goes at an exponentially faster rate than everyone else. But he loved baseball. And he loved it so much that he was able to play Little League, and then it got to a point where he couldn't play anymore. But for whatever reason, he adopted the State College Spikes. And he lived down in the Reading area. Josiah lived in the Reading area. He adopted the State College Spikes, and in part because the Spikes took him in. He would go, my goodness, let's see, there'd be 38 games in the season at home. And of the 38 games, I'm going to venture, Matt, that he would go to 20 of them? 20 of them a year, maybe?
That sounds Something about
like
right.
That? Right?
I remember seeing him in the dugout and being carried out after the one Spikes game that I did last summer.
Absolutely. No, because he was the honorary bench coach.
Yep. He
was the bench coach. He'd come up in the booth, and I want to tell you, Joe Putnam, we always had JoJo on in the pregame show. And then he'd come up in the booth, and he'd do the middle 3 innings with Joe Putnam. And Joe Putnam, who's about as nice a person as there is on the face of the earth.
Absolutely.
All right. Was just great with him on the air. You know, I'd kid around with him on the air because, you know me, I kid around with everybody. So I treated Josiah like everybody else. You know what I mean? I thought that was important to treat him like, you know, kid around with him a little bit. I call him the seer of all seer, the sage of all sages. And he go, Steve. Right? And I loved him. And Josiah Viera passed away Christmas Eve at the age of 14. He's finally out of pain. His last game, he only went to, I want to say he went to 3 games maybe this year. Maybe it was only 2. He was there opening night. And then the last one was the All-Star game. And at the All-Star game, they had a rule on pitching. You were allowed to pitch no more than one inning. That was it. It's the All-Star game. They don't want you out there. You don't want to blow somebody's arms out because you want to win the North-South game. All right? Randy Alcantara of Williamsport, the Phillies affiliate, pitched the 8th inning. They then sent him back out there for the 9th. Now, they did it deliberately, and they had told us ahead of time what the plan was. And Joe Krusel, another person who's just an awesome guy, Joe Krusel sent Josiah out to make the pitching change. They already had somebody warming up in the bullpen. All the players gathered around him. And the fans, 6,000 of them, got up and gave him a standing ovation, to which he tipped his cap.
That's awesome.
It turns out that would be the last time we'd see him in the ballpark. And it was late. Usually you get, because he has to start school and so forth. But we also knew he wasn't doing well this summer. He also was around Penn State football. He'd take in a game every year. James Franklin would carry Josiah in on his shoulders going into the stadium because he'd ride on the team bus on the way in. James would put him on his shoulders and take him in. He'd come up in the booth. We're a little stricter on, the network has its own rules on people being on the air, so it's far more structured. Baseball's looser, it's easier. So we'd have Josiah on all the time. But he'd come into the booth, and of course, Josiah was 38 inches high. And so I would take him and I'd say, hey, Jojo, come on up here. I said, come on. And I'd sit him down on my lap and I'd do the game while Josiah sat on my lap. That way he could see the game. Let me tell you, there's two parts to this Josiah Viera story that are very important. Well, I've already mentioned several key parts. What the Spikes have done, Chuck Greenberg, Jason Dombach, Scott Walker, Joe Putnam. Okay? You can't do more than they did. Can't do more than what James Franklin did. But there are two other parts of this Josiah Viera story that are really important. Number one, if you get progeria, normally your lifespan is between 8 and 13 years of age, more toward the middle ground, obviously. Josiah made it to 14 and a half. His birthday was in May. Josiah made it to 14 and a half. I firmly believe that Josiah Viera lived longer than the normal progeria victim because of sports, because of the State College Spikes and because of Penn State football, and especially the baseball part of it, because he spent more time around baseball than football. But he got into football, and James Franklin got into having Josiah around. But because of the Spikes and Penn State football, I firmly believe Josiah Viera lived longer because he had something to look forward to and was made to feel important. Because he was important. And the people around him understood that and treated him as such. And I think that allowed him to live longer. Now here's the second part. He made better men out of 18 to 23-year-olds who were going forward with their life. Those players would take him to the batting cage. They'd bring him out to the field. They'd play catch with him. I'd go into the clubhouse, and all of a sudden I'd look, and there'd be a wiffle ball field in the clubhouse set up so they could play wiffle ball with Josiah in the clubhouse. Right? He'd be sitting there every single time eating the post-game spread with the players, and the players talking to him, hey, Joe, hey, what about, hey, all the time. Never ignoring him. Never passing him off. Never blowing him off. Never. Carrying him wherever he needed to be carried. I mean, Josiah certainly could walk, but it would be faster if he got carried. Josiah Viera lived longer because of the State College Spikes and also Penn State football. He also made better men, especially out of the Spikes players, because he had much more contact with them. He made better men out of them. And the Cardinals end up with better men in their system because they developed a depth of caring and a heart where all the success they've had up to that point, yeah, I got a 10-game hitting streak. Yeah, look at Josiah. You know what? Got to go back to work. I think it's his story is more than just a story of somebody who was around sports. He lived longer because of them. They became better men because of him. Oh, my goodness, I'm going to miss him. We'll come back with more in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
When it comes to car buying, there's the other guy's way, and then there's the SMC way. The other guys force you into a vehicle you really don't want. The Sunbury Motors way lets you take the time you need to browse, ask questions, and take the test drive and think on it. For over 100 years, the Mertz family and all their employees have made your experience the most pleasant one you'll ever have. The other guys won't offer you the best price for your trade, no matter how much they say they will. The SMC way is their promise to provide you with the most money the market shows your vehicle is worth. The SMC way is to offer you all applicable factory rebates on new vehicles and generous discounts. Looking for a pre-owned vehicle? The SMC way checks each vehicle in a 200-mile radius to determine the lowest price, then beat it. It's the lowest price promise, just part of the SMC way. The choice is up to you, the other guy's way or the SMC way. The SMC way wins every time. Sunbury Motors Company in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, and at sunburymotors.com. Selling more cars and satisfying more customers for over 100 years.
The holidays are a special time to show your appreciation for the important people in your life. There's no better way to show you care than to give a Susquehanna Life magazine subscription. Stay tuned for a special offer.
Hi, this is Erica Shames, publisher of Susquehanna Life magazine. Each issue shines a bright light on all that's positive in our region. Even readers who've lived here all their lives tell us they learned something new in each issue. When you're thinking unique gifts, I hope you'll think Susquehanna Life. Now is the time to introduce family and friends to the special stories we tell. Stories of history and hope, gratitude and gifts, business and bounty, culture and cuisine, plus how to access outdoor fun in the region's most comprehensive event listing.
Right now, in celebration of the magazine's 25-year anniversary, you can give 2 one-year gift subscriptions for $25. That's a 40% savings. Call 1-800-232-1670 to order. That's 1-800-232-1670.
And thanks for making Susquehanna Life a part of your life.
Hey, where have you been?
Railside Furnishings in Mifflinburg. I'm going back for their after-holiday savings event. You can save up to 30% off their real wood furniture. Everything from modern to rustic styles, and it's all handcrafted. You know you just can't beat the Amish-made craftsmanship. Come with me. They have tours of the workshop and light refreshments, too.
Well, I've been looking for a love seat.
Perfect. They have bedrooms, dining rooms, indoor, and even outdoor furniture.
Okay, I'll drive.
Railside Furnishings, Beaver Run Road in Mifflinburg. RailsideFurnishings.com and Facebook. Stop by through Saturday for the after-holiday sales event.
We all know by now that Mountainside Coffee helps me wake up before the roosters crow. But business owners, here's something you may not know. You can get Mountainside Coffee delivered right to your business. 65% of workers drink coffee on the job, and science doesn't lie. Caffeine keeps people focused, alert, and awake, plus improves concentration and memory. And don't you want those qualities in your employees? It's cheaper and easier than you may think. Visit mountainsidecoffee.com. That's mountainsidecoffee.com. A division of Tulpahawken Mountain Spring Water.
I've talked about Josiah Viera on the show before. In fact, I related a lot of this, I think, the day after the All-Star game because of everything. It's I'd check in with Joe Putnam once in a while, and I'd say, "Hey, Joe, how's he doing?" And he's like, because Joe had a lot more contact than I did. I'll probably, I've already sent his grandfather a text, and he got back to me. I may send him another one today just to make sure he's doing well, because grandfather Dave is. I'm telling you right now, Matt, the guy, Dave. The handbook on being the greatest grandfather ever.
I've heard a lot of good stories. Yeah. Just awesome.
We talk a lot about Josiah. That man, his grandfather, that man, special.
Absolutely.
Mark Wogenrich, next half hour. We'll talk with him tomorrow. Eli Gold, play-by-play voice, Alabama. Tom Leach, play-by-play voice, Kentucky. Rich Scarcella. And the King, the play-by-play voice of Connecticut. Well, maybe not the play-by-play voice, but some people feel he is Connecticut.
Taking your calls at 800-795-9565. This is The Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Great to have you with us today. By the way, Tony Carr, who was drafted in the second round by the New Orleans Pelicans, and is on loan. I guess he's still the Pelicans' property. Who's playing for Fiat Torino, coached by Larry Brown. Larry Brown and Fiat Torino parted ways today.
I saw that.
There's only a few games left in the season. They're a whopping 5-19.
That didn't last that long, did it?
No, let's see. So he lasted 24 games?
Yeah, because wasn't this his first season?
Yeah, but he's coached everywhere. I mean, he's 13 college and between the college, the ABA, and the NBA, coached 13 teams. But the very capable Paolo Galbiati is going to be his replacement for the final 8 games. So, I feel like Tony Carr is in good hands with Paolo running the show. I have no idea who that is. All right, so let's bring in Mark Wogenrich, somebody I do know who he is, from the Allentown Morning Call. Happy holidays, my friend. Great to have you with us.
Appreciate it. You too, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I hope everything's great for you. I hope you had a great holiday.
Excellent. Yeah, very much so. Looking forward to the game.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to the game. Let's start with the Tommy Stevens part. He won't be there in a backup capacity. Because he won't, he may end up going to the game, but he's not there right now. Just your quick thoughts on that.
That was, I think, a bit of a bolt. Maybe it explained a little bit of why Trace was playing probably not at full strength in some of those midseason games, like after he got hurt. Later in the season, maybe that kind of explains a little bit of that. I'm wondering if it's something that's going to keep Tommy, that they needed to address long-term, this is the most important decision, obviously, because you're looking at him for next year. That's the most important thing. And I think the most important thing is you want him ready to go for spring drills. Having missed last year, and then if there's any reason that he would potentially miss another spring drills, especially going into being a starter or at least being in a competition for starting, that's an important time. So for him to do that, I would sacrifice this bowl game in order to get him ready for spring, no doubt.
How much do you think it helps the decision that Sean Clifford is there?
It's got to help it a huge amount, and I also would imagine it helps a great deal that you can, if you need to, you can play Will Levis and he can still redshirt too.
That's exactly right.
That change makes a huge difference. If you get if it's 35 points and you want to give Will some run late in the game, if it's a big lead, or if you need to play a third quarterback, you could do so too. I think that's a big element. I'd really like to see a little bit more of Sean. He was fun to watch, and in the very limited action that we saw. I think a really big arm. I think a pretty big, pretty accurate arm. I think he's going to give Tommy a run in the spring. I would imagine Tommy at 6'4" and 230 is going to be kind of a real good prototype to run that offense. But it's not. I don't think it'll be handed to him, nor should it be. I think Clifford's going to give him a run for that starting job.
This is where I give Clifford a lot of credit, and I could probably this would be one of those where I'll lend more insight, only because I've seen him a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Clifford is a guy that came in, and to be honest with you, Mark, I think of all the guys they have there, I think he throws, quote, the best ball. Like it just spins out of
Yeah, you watch a little bit. I'll watch those guys when they throw pregame, and you see him throwing from like the 40 to the back, the back of the end zone. He can launch it, and it there's no flutter. It looks like in his ball, it really just zings out of his hand. It's fun to watch.
Which then brings me to the next part. It's the part where obviously McSorley can run it. Tommy Stevens obviously can run it. That's where I give Clifford all the credit. He now has really embraced how to run this offense.
Yeah.
And I like the way he runs the offense, the way they have it scoped up. He runs the ball pretty well, and it actually is something he had to learn here.
Yeah, I guess he probably didn't do a ton of that in high school. And in Tommy's case, it almost looks like occasionally when he's just playing that quarterback spot, that he maybe instinctually will run a little quicker than he should, that maybe he should be looking to throw a couple of more times, if only to kind of get better in that situation. That's something I think he's going to have to get better at, too, in handling when to run versus when to throw. And it probably is a little inverted for the two of them. Sean now understanding that he can run instead of throw, and Tommy vice versa.
Right, now let's bring it, Mark, this to the bowl game itself, to the game. What's the general impression you have of Kentucky?
My general impression is that they are going to horsepower Penn State's off, or the run part of that game. Having seen now clips of Josh Allen, like I had not really seen him during the season, so kind of catching up with him, man, he moves. Wow, and he's just a powerful guy. He's a fast butter, just a really good, at getting into tackles, getting into the backfield, just disrupting. I mean, I just really look at him as being disruptive. That kind of thing, in my impression, is going to put the pressure on Penn State's passing game, which is kind of where we saw that a little bit maybe last year as well with Washington. Washington had the defensive line that was really highly thought of, and Penn State handled it, pretty well. I think they're gonna make this, they're gonna want Penn State to throw the ball, and that's where I look at. Trace McSorley mentioned, a couple of weeks ago before the game, they want to get back into that big play thing. They had 10 explosive plays against, the way they count them, against Maryland, and I think that was as many as they had in about the last 3 weeks, the previous 3 weeks combined. I mean, they just got in that stretch with really Michigan and Wisconsin and Rutgers. They just did not have the explosive plays that they were used to. And I think I think their offense is going to maybe push in that direction. So they're going to try to get downfield on Kentucky's defense and try to beat them over the top instead of maybe running through them.
Yeah, the two, I'll tell you, watching tape, and I've now watched 3 games. I watched Louisville because it was the last game. Okay. I watched Georgia, and I watched Texas A&M. Number one, Allen really stands out because of how quick he is. And not only that, Mark, it's where he lines up. He takes great angles to give himself a better edge. The other guy that really stuck out to me in terms of pure speed and timing is Mike Edwards, number 7, the safety. He's going to have to be accounted for every time that they run the ball.
I think the combination of those, they do get some interceptions. I think Edwards does has a couple, and Allen just makes tackles for loss. 14 sacks, something like that.
Yes.
If he's going to be
4th in the nation.
He's going to. The pressure that I think he can put on is going to be a real component that Penn State's going to have to be able to handle.
Now, offensively, this is what I've noticed about them offensively with Wilson. He's not a great thrower of the football, but the first series of the game, they usually throw 2 or 3 times in the first series of game to get you thinking that they can throw the ball.
Right.
In the end, they want to run it.
And why wouldn't you with with Snell, and they get some other backs too.
Yeah, Rose number 10. Rose number 10 is very good.
Yeah, I mean he's what, a 1,300-yard rusher. Benny Snell is, I guess.
Yes,
or in that range. Really good yards per carry average too. I think Brett Pry said it when we were at the Bowl Media Day. He said something like, "This is a team that majors in running the ball, or they're advanced. That's their dissertation in running the ball, and that's how they're going to do it." So this, I look at that defensive line for Penn State. I look at those down guys as being real vital, and I think a player to me. We've seen Micah Parsons make a lot of just really good, open field tackles and, good positional tackles this year. This is the kind of game, I think, where Micah could kind of come out, not saying come out of his shell because he's already done that, but he could really, I think, with having a couple of weeks, getting a little bit more, inclined to play that, better position to play linebacker and maybe feeling a little more confident and aggressive. I think this is the kind of game that he could come out and not just make a lot of tackles, but make really important tackles, make tackles on third down run stops, or maybe, catch somebody in the backfield to force a second and long or third and long, that sort of thing. I mean, he can make kind of, really game impact plays.
Okay, so let's when you've watched the Penn State defense over the last month of the season, especially the last 3 weeks, what were they showing you on a week in and week out basis, Mark?
I liked a little more aggressiveness maybe in their secondary. I thought Nick Scott was really good all year, and he just seemed to get better as the season went on. He was one of those players that I've just always liked, even going back. Remember him at the Tax Slayer Bowl talking about being asked about maybe transitioning to safety way back then, and he took that process a long way to where he's come now. I thought the defensive line just was a showstopper. Those last couple of games between Sharif and Yetur and down guys, Windsor, Kevin Givens, they got in. They just got in on plays. They got in. They really were so disruptive of the quarterbacks. Micah, to me, again, was a real big factor. And Jan Johnson always seems to be just like that, kind of that poised centerpiece in that defense. So they getting beyond tackling better, I think that's probably an issue that everybody has, but they just seem to be more comfortable in some of the things they were doing so that they could play faster and get into the backfield and get into game-changing plays that force, like I said before, second and long, third and long, that sort of thing. That's what I kind of noticed what they were doing.
All right. Now, offensively, the last 3 weeks especially, a little different competition, but you still ended up playing Wisconsin, Rutgers, Maryland. Where do you think they were better, and did youth at certain spots enter into some of that evaluation?
Yeah, it definitely had to. Trace pretty much said that they were that stretch kind of before Maryland, that they were just inconsistent throwing the ball. He felt like he wasn't at his best, and when he's not being accurate, or somebody else is not running the right route, or somebody else is stepping out of a break too early, there were it's just inclinations of over and over and over that one mistake kind of led into more for that passing game. And it looked a little bit better. I think it looked better against Maryland. Trace being healthy, I'm sure helped. My local kid, I'm going to write about him in the next day or so, Jahan Dotson out of Nazareth. Yeah. He's been, just looking back at some of the plays he's made this year, going to that Iowa game, he's made just a level of, not a ton of catches. He's got 12 catches, but 8 of them are for first downs. He converted 2 fourth downs, I think 2 third and longs. He kept them. I think that you could argue that his catch, that fourth down catch against Iowa, was one of the bigger plays of the year, because Penn State was trailing at 12-0 at the time, really had not much going on. And it was a low, kind of on his shoestring catch that he just made that made it look pretty easy. And those are the kinds of guys, I think, that they kind of hit some moments that got him going. Seeing Ricky Slade again those last couple of games, I think he ran pretty strong. And Pat Freiermuth, I think going into the season, I might have just just out of size, thought Zach Kuntz probably might have had a little bit of an edge. But Freiermuth is really, once you saw him play, he became not just their kind of their best tight end, but one of their better offensive players.
No question. Yeah, no question. In fact, Jack Hammond asked me in preseason, he says, okay, give me who are the top three freshmen. I said, Freiermuth, Parsons. I said, Jahan Dotson. He said, what is it about Dotson? Because, everybody talked about Shorter and Daniel Jordan. Yeah. And I said, Jack, he makes everything look easy to the point where, okay, will it translate into a game? Because it's at the end of the game, he does exactly the same thing. The only mistake I saw him make all season in a game was the drop against Rutgers.
Right.
That's the only one.
Against Rutgers, then there was a blocking. I don't remember which game it was. There was a blocking mistake that he made that you expect from a 170-pound freshman.
Yeah, right. I mean, but that's it. I mean, that's, to be honest with you, over the last 5 months, I only saw him drop. And I literally see 400 pass plays a week, literally. I mean, I'm not kidding. I mean, I remember one time somebody asked me about Darryl Clark and Pat Devlin, and I said, well, Clark's the better quarterback. He's got the better arm. And everybody told me, no, Devlin's got the better arm. I said, I watched them throw 4,000 passes apiece during the course of I said, were you there? I said, you saw him throw 40 in a blue-white game.
Right.
I said, and I saw Dotson drop 4 or 5 passes all year. Everything's just natural to him, Mark. It's natural.
Yeah, and it's been that way. I mean, I watched him at the state track meet a couple of years ago in the long jump, and he was effortless on this thing. He was just jumping past people, and it's a gliding motion when he runs. It's not a running motion. I mean, this stuff. When I watch him, I understand when people, he really makes you understand when people talk about somebody making something look easy. It's kind of a visual representation of that, no doubt.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, I think Shorter and George are both going to be really, really good. This kid's playing because he looked around and said, "We got to play this guy," because that's what kids have to do. They have to do something to force you to play them. He was good enough to force them to say, "We got to play him."
And not only that,
that's the great part about it.
We're going to play you at a different position than you started the season at too. You're going to play you
right.
you start a slot receiver, and now you're going to go outside, learn a new position in a week.
Yeah, which he did. And then here's the other neat part at least for Penn State. He's going to UCLA if Jim Moore is still the coach there. When they changed up to Chip Kelly, he changed up to Penn State. So I mean, he was able to stay home.
Yeah, about a year ago. Right now, he was pretty much there. I mean, I think he committed. Well, he decommitted in January. He was committed to them. So, his dad said we were just absolutely shocked when he committed to UCLA.
Well, hopefully it's a much easier drive for them now from Nazareth.
Beyond belief right now.
Hey, by the way, it sounds like Matt Millen's doing pretty well on the road to recovery.
Yeah, I got a message from his wife Pat today that he was walking a little bit yesterday. They said he's ahead of his recovery schedule. Saying he's taking doctor's orders, which I find hard to believe, but good for him. And, I think he tried to buck some of those orders earlier on.
Okay, so that's a surprise that he would attempt to do it.
Yeah, he had a nurse, I guess, covertly sneak him in some fried chicken way back in October or November, something like that. But now he's doing really well. They really couldn't be happier with the way everything's going so far. So, no. Definitely a long road still, but I really hope to see him get him back in the booth next fall.
Yeah, I think he's going to make it, which is awesome. And in terms of walking, they do want you walking relatively early. Mm-hmm. So I'm not surprised that they're having him walk right away, because when it comes to any kind of heart procedure, they actually do, because of blood flow, clotting, things like that.
Yeah, that sort of thing. But they were really they were really positive about the match being good, about the heart, being a good match for him, and actually his body taking to it well so far. So there have, as far as I know, again, I don't be too out of turn, but there haven't been any of those sorts of complications yet. Now, and those are the best parts that you want to see.
Hey, Mark, always a pleasure. I really look forward to seeing you down in Orlando.
Yeah, me too. Look forward to it. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, as always. Mark Wogenrich, Allentown Morning Call. We'll come back with more in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK, brought to you by Sunbury Motor. Always great to talk with Mark Wogenrich. Rich Scarcella is going to join us tomorrow. And also Tom Leach, the play-by-play voice of Kentucky football tomorrow, and Eli Gold, the play-by-play voice of Alabama football tomorrow. And the King tomorrow. King is, again, the suit's winning the bowl picks. But the difference is between all of us, like Sean has a career, I have a career, King has a career. This is all the suit has to live for. I mean, out there, anybody out there, tell me I'm wrong. This is all he has to live for. Thus, he does something the rest of us don't do. I will freely admit, Matt, I do zero research on these games. I love watching them. I enjoy them. I've got Duke and Temple on in the background here, although I can't even tell you right now what the score is because I was interviewing Mark. But man, I was the one nut that stayed up all last night into overtime and watched that Cheez-It Bowl.